Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Joseph A. Dandurand's play Thawaxia, the Hungry Feast Dish. So this is a children's play, so that's worth keeping in mind, because when I tell you the storyline, it may seem fairly simplistic and straightforward. It actually is much more complicated. There's more that happens that I'm going to summarize, but this is, I think, a really, really good introduction to First Nations performance and storytelling techniques, particularly for children, but really even for anybody. So Dandurand is a member of the Kwantlen First Nation, which I'm not really sure if they've been displaced, but their traditional lands were in what's now Vancouver, British Columbia. Thawaxia draws on First Nations myth and legend. It introduces all of these different themes that we see very commonly in First Nations storytelling, First Nations performance, etc., etc. And we get this basically right from the beginning of the play. They do have a characters list, which is actually quite helpful, particularly since the characters have Kwantlen names. And so we get both the pronunciation guide to pronounce those properly, which is really useful for people who wanted to perform this play. We also get the English equivalent. So, Kwantlen, for instance, is the mouse, and it's KW''AT''EL, and we get a nice little pronunciation guide there, so we know that it's Kwantlen. So that's really useful. Most of the characters here have ritual or mythic significance to First Nations people. So Thawaxia is a feast dish. I mean, I think it's kind of a bowl type thing, somewhat like this, like what's depicted on the cover here. But she's regarded as a great but terrifying spirit who likes to eat children. Then we've got the various storytellers, who are a sort of Greek chorus, as the character description puts it. Basically, the rest of the players make up the storytellers when they're not playing their individual parts. We've got Sasuke, which is a Sasquatch, the servant of Thawaxia, an unwilling servant of Thawaxia. Kwantlen, the mouse, who steals a small piece of cheese from Thawaxia's vast hoard of food, and for that, Kwantlen is faced with the penalty either that he has to find Thawaxia 2 children to eat, or Kwantlen and his family will be eaten themselves. We've got Squarex, the raven. This is a very traditional trickster figure in First Nations and Native American myth and legend. The raven is very, very clever, typically in these stories, and Squarex is no exception here. Squarex befriends, so this is a little bit of a weird bit that I don't fully understand. There's a girl Thakit and a boy Thakit, which are trees, and they come into the spirit world basically seeking their parents, who are these sort of mighty trees that are in danger of being cut down. But then that storyline kind of gets dropped for most of the play because they transition into a girl Spayath and a boy Spayath, which are bears. So I don't really follow entirely the logic of that, why they transition from trees to bears, but they spend most of the play as young bears, And Squarex is helping them. He's sort of teaching them to find food. He teaches them to fly. He teaches them basically to survive in the spirit world until Kwantlen comes along and says, I need 2 children. Squarex, can you help me? And he says, these are the only 2 children I know, but they're my friend. They're my friends. So rather than doing that, rather than feeding these 2 children, my 2 friends, to Thawaxia, I will help you figure out a way to trick Thawaxia. So that's essentially the setup. What Squarex does is he eats a sleeping worm, which is kind of a sleeping potion. And he goes into a dream world in which he stops the second moon from rising. Now that's important because Thawaxia had given Kwantlen until the second moon to find 2 children for her to eat. Otherwise, again, Thawaxia was going to eat Kwantlen and his family. So Raven, Squarex, stops the second moon from rising in this dream world, which in reality stops the moon from rising. And so that deadline is sort of extended indefinitely. While Squarex is doing that, Kwantlen and the 2 young Spath go to the Great Mountain. And while they are there, they get a number of gifts. So Kwantlen brings from the Great Mountain a rainbow, which was given to him by the Great Mountain. He also brings a spoon that Squarex had been carving earlier in the play, and that Squarex had given to Kwantlen. So those are the first 2 gifts, a rainbow and a spoon. Now the spoon is significant because Sasuke had forgotten. So Sasuke is this sort of weird, interesting kind of fool character almost, where she is Thawaxia's unwilling servant, and she has to gather up Thawaxia's feast, basically all the food for Thawaxia's feast, but she doesn't really like it. She doesn't. She's scared of Thawaxia, and so she's constantly forgetting things. So Sasuke had forgotten the spoon that she needed to stir the sauce, and she'd forgotten a bowl of water to give to Thawaxia. So Kwantlen brings the rainbow, brings the spoon to replace the one that Sasuke had forgotten. The boy Spath comes in with a bowl of it says here, a bowl of sweet, cool water, which he had gotten from the Great Mountain, and he gives that to Sasuke. And then the girl Spath comes in with a rattle given to her by the Great Mountain. Now, Thawaxia doesn't have a rainbow or a rattle, and she wants the sauce, and she wants this bowl of water. So Sasuke is able to fulfill her responsibilities to make this sauce and to give Thawaxia the water. And then she offers Sasuke offers Thawaxia the rainbow and the rattle as gifts in exchange for Kwantlen and his family. And Thawaxia is just super, super pleased with this. So it says here, thunder rolls. That's one of the recurring motifs of Thawaxia in this play. We get this sound effect of thunder and Thawaxia's laughter just throughout the play, and it's this menacing sound. So we have thunder rolls. Sasuke begins her ceremony. Squarex goes to the sun puppet. Sasuke shakes the rattle. Everyone starts to sing the celebration song. Sasuke shakes the rattle and moves around the rainbow and all the gifts. Squarex goes behind the wall as the sun rises. The thunder ends. Thawaxia speaks in a softer, more loving voice. Sasuke, why is the sun out? Why didn't the second moon rise? Why is my belly full? Delicious, sweet, cool water. Where is Kwantlen? Have I eaten him already? Have I eaten his family? Where did that rainbow come from? Sasuke, you are the best, always taking care of me. I will not eat you or your family, Kwantlen. Let us have a feast. Please come and be happy. Help yourselves. There is enough to share. So what we get at the end of the play is that Thawaxia is basically completely changed by these gifts. Initially, she had jealously hoarded this food, even begrudging Kwantlen a tiny morsel of cheese and punishing him for stealing that cheese with the threat of eating him and his family. And by the end, because Thawaxia has been sort of honored in this way, because she has been shown this kindness, she reverses course and she provides a feast for everybody who has been hungry throughout the play. So it's this very sort of nice, uplifting ending in which the positive actions that one does in the world are rewarded positively. So I think it's a really interesting play. Again, the storyline is somewhat basic in that sense, but it's embroidered with a lot of mythological elements, such as Squarex's relationship to the sun and the moon, the ethics of deforestation and how we engage with the natural world and things like this. And then throughout, we have these sections of storytelling where, in the beginning, the introductory storytelling, we start with the introduction of 5 actors who all introduce themselves as a storyteller. And they introduce this as being a story from the Kwantlen people, so that's sort of initially culturally located. And then actor 1, so we get this big introductory bit that sets the stage. And this is why I really think this would be a great play for introducing Indigenous performance and storytelling. So actor 1 says, of the Kwantlen people, they once lived in the sky and were known as sky people. Actor 2 says, but one day they came down to earth, when the great sun came to them and told them to take the salmon from the river. Actor 3 says, the Kwantlen people believe in the spirit power. They believe in the power of the animals. Actor 1 says, the birds. Actor 2 says, the rocks. Actor 4 says, trees. Actor 5 says, fish. Actor 3 says, and even the power of a spindle whorl. Then the actors stop and show the audience the spindle whorl, which is a kind of sort of a top, I think, used for spinning thread or cloth. So actor 4 says, this is a spindle. Actor 3 says, and this is a spindle whorl. Actor 4 says, they've not been used for generations, but now they can tell stories. Look at them, aren't they beautiful? So this is a really interesting idea, this idea of repurposing traditional objects. In this case, the spindle and the spindle whorl aren't used for what they were originally used for. They're used as storytelling devices. A little bit later, we get this bit where actor 5 says, the Kwantlen are great believers in the world they cannot see, and so we tell stories so that we can be at peace with the spirits. Then a little bit later, actor 1 puts on a mask. Sasuke begins to move. She prepares the food for the feast. So we have this transition from the storytellers to the performers through the use of masks, ritual masking. So I actually think this is a really, really interesting opening bit because it introduces a lot of the elements of traditional Indigenous storytelling. So, like, I'm most familiar with stories told by the Haudenosaunee, or the Iroquois, as they're more often called in English. I've heard a decent number of Haudenosaunee stories, and they often have these sort of recurring themes. This focus on change, this focus on the interplay between the physical and the spiritual worlds, the importance of nature, the personification or embodiment of nature in characters, these sorts of things. And then an ethical lesson. A lot of Indigenous storytelling, in my experience at least, is focused on teaching some sort of ethical lesson about cooperation or about respect for the environment, respect for others, reciprocity, these sorts of values that are very central to many Indigenous cultures, First Nations and Native American cultures, but also Aboriginal Australians, the Maori, Indigenous peoples of Polynesia, etc., etc. So these sorts of things are very, very typical of First Nations storytelling and performance techniques. And I think Thawaxia is a great play for introducing those concepts.